This year will be different, because the most important conversation you need to have isn't with anyone else. It's the one you've been avoiding with yourself. We exist in a time of endless noise, a world that rewards constant sharing, visibility, and proving your worth to an invisible audience. But this outward focus comes at a hidden cost. The more you speak to be seen, the more you drift from the person who truly needs to be heard. Psychology reveals a quiet truth. You don't lose your path from a lack of direction, but from turning your back on your own inner world. When your life is lived through the perceptions of others, you slowly trade authenticity for acceptance. You wear a mask, not just for others, but until you forget it's even there. Silence, then, isn't about hiding. It's the courageous act of stopping the performance. It's where you cease explaining and start listening to the whispers of your unconscious mind. As this new chapter begins, perhaps your purpose isn't to shout louder, but to finally turn inward with bravery, to focus on yourself and embrace the quiet. This is the journey to what Carl Jung called individuation, becoming whole. If you feel a pull toward a deeper, more authentic existence, one not reliant on external applause, stay with this. And if you're prepared to step onto this path, let me know by writing "I choose quiet" below. 1. The approval trap: why you hand your worth to others. That subtle sting when you're overlooked, the hollow pang when your effort goes unnoticed. We dismiss these as minor ego bruises, but psychologically, they are not small. They are signals that your sense of value has been anchored outside of yourself. This insecurity isn't vanity. It's the echo of an inner emptiness, a place where you cannot stand firm unless someone else provides the ground. Jung observed we aren't born this way. This dependency forms as our connection to our inner life weakens. When you can no longer decipher your own internal voice, you turn outward and ask the world to define you. At that point, approval ceases to be simple encouragement. It becomes proof you exist, that you matter, that you have a right to be here. And without that proof, a primal anxiety surfaces. Think of someone you know, or perhaps a version of yourself who is always on, vibrant in social settings, quick to share achievements and struggles alike. But notice what happens in the absence of feedback. The energy deflates. Irritability rises. This isn't a social media problem. It's a symptom of a missing inner anchor. Jung taught that when the self is not solid, we try to stake our worth in the external world. Every like, every compliment, is a temporary pole driven into shifting sand. It feels stable until the tide of others' attention changes, leaving you feeling uprooted. There's a painful paradox here, one that modern life amplifies. Loneliness doesn't stem from being alone, but from being disconnected from what is vital within you. When you can't commune with your own depths, you talk more, post more, perform more, hoping someone will finally see you and tell you who you are. But that recognition only skims the surface. It never reaches the root of the solitude. Picture yourself on a vast, dark ocean. If you have a fixed star to navigate by, you can endure the storm. But without that inner guidance, you'll cling to any piece of driftwood that floats by: a compliment, a new follower. These keep you afloat for a moment, but will never carry you to shore. The more you seek recognition, the lonelier your soul becomes. The danger is this need often wears a convincing disguise. It looks like ambition, drive, a quest for excellence. But Jung stressed the critical question is one of motive. Do you act from genuine belief, or from a need to be witnessed acting? Outwardly identical, these motives are worlds apart psychologically. One springs from self-connection, the other from the fear of inner abandonment. Every time you wait for a response, your mind isn't truly reaching out. It's searching for a reflection of yourself in another's eyes. Each bit of praise becomes a patch over an internal sense of lack, a patch that never holds. The blunt truth Jung delivered is this: the more you rely on external validation, the further you drift from your core. the only source of enduring worth. Understanding this isn't about self-blame. It's about honest observation. It's realizing what your need for approval is really telling you about the state of your inner world. The journey of this year, then, isn't about being seen more. It's about becoming so inwardly steady that you no longer need to be. 2. The mask that becomes your face. When you start to see the approval trap for what it is, a strange void can appear. If you're not performing for that validation, then who are you supposed to be? This crossroads brings us to a pivotal Jungian concept, the persona, your social mask. The persona isn't inherently false. It's a necessary interface for functioning in society. You can't present every raw impulse and contradiction. You need a role to play. The psychological crisis begins not when you use a mask, but when you fuse with it, when you no longer know you're wearing one. Jung put it starkly: the persona is what you are not, but what you and others believe you are. The true danger isn't that society misunderstands you, but that you start to live according to that misunderstanding. Consider the mythological shapeshifter, eternally adapting to every situation. Initially, this brings power and survival. But with endless change comes a loss of original form. Without a stable center, this fluidity leads to disintegration. This is why so many feel exhausted, not from work, but from the energy required to maintain an image. The persona demands constant management of your words, reactions, and emotions. As it inflates, the authentic self is relegated backstage. Your suppressed feelings, unaccepted thoughts, and mismatched desires don't vanish. They are pressed into the unconscious, where they gather force, later emerging as a sense of emptiness, irritability, or the haunting feeling of living without truly being present. Society often rewards a well-crafted persona, the poised, consistent, appropriate individual. But Jungian maturity isn't about perfect role-play. It's about maintaining a living connection to what's real within you. Imagine your life as a structure. The persona is the exterior paint, making it fit and look appealing. But if you obsess over repainting while the internal framework cracks and rots, the entire building is at risk. Many today invest everything in the paint image, status, likes, while the foundational beams of inner life are neglected. This imbalance is a primary source of modern exhaustion. As we move forward, the pressure to identify with our roles intensifies. The practice here is awareness. The simple, profound awareness that this is a role I play. It is not my essence. It begins in small, private reclamations, allowing yourself to be silent instead of speaking to preserve an image, admitting fatigue even when you look fine, not defining yourself solely by a job title. Each moment like this is a step toward reclaiming authorship of your inner life. Before we go further, pause. If you've ever felt you're performing life more than living it, share in the comments one role you feel you've carried for too long. Naming it is not weakness, it's the first signal of readiness for what comes next. 3. The fear of the quiet. Once you glimpse the mask you wear, a common reaction isn't relief, it's unease. With the performance dialed down, you're confronted with the space behind it. And this leads to a fear we rarely name, the fear of true silence. Silence terrifies, not because it's empty, but because it's overwhelmingly full. When the external noise fades, what you've suppressed begins to surface. The buried exhaustion, the quiet sense of misalignment, a low-grade sorrow you're always busy soothing. Silence doesn't create these feelings. It removes the blanket you've used to smother them. It's like turning off the radio during a long, lonely drive. Suddenly, you hear the engine, the road, your own breathing. The journey hasn't changed, but your presence within it becomes undeniable and more real. From a Jungian lens, this isn't a malfunction. It's a necessary phase. We aren't lacking in activity. We're deficient in the capacity to be with our own inner reality. When you've lived outwardly for years, your interior becomes unfamiliar territory, and the unfamiliar sparks fear. Jung offered a famous dictum: one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Silence is the condition that allows that darkness, the unacknowledged parts of you, to emerge. What's frightening is that it offers no escape hatch. This is where the split between your social self and your inner self becomes palpable. Many confuse conscious silence with depressive isolation. Jung distinguished them clearly. Withdrawal is cutting off the world from fear. Conscious silence is remaining fully in life, but choosing not to use noise as an escape from yourself. It is an active, courageous stance. Paradoxically, the more you avoid silence, the more power it holds. The more you dare to sit within it, the more it transforms from a threat into a guide. Jung saw this fear as a signal, an invitation. It says, something within is asking to be seen, integrated, brought into the light of your awareness. Practically, this doesn't require a hermit's retreat. It starts microscopically, not filling a spare moment with sound, letting an uncomfortable feeling simply exist without immediately fixing it. A few minutes of not reacting, not consuming, just noticing. The goal isn't duration, but the quality of your attention. You don't use silence to become better. You use it to become more real. And when you do, you'll discover a profound shift. What unsettles you isn't the quiet itself, but the parts of you it reveals. 4. The unseen driver, your shadow. After silence has done its revealing work, a deeper layer of your psyche begins to stir. This is the part that has always been there, quietly steering your reactions, choices, and life path. Jung named this the shadow. The shadow isn't your evil side. It is the sum of all you've had to deny, repress, or hide to fit in, to be loved, to be deemed acceptable. It's the anger you buried to be kind, the vulnerability you masked to seem strong, the ambition you downplayed to not threaten. It can also contain dormant strengths and creativity you feared to express. The shadow's power lies in its unconsciousness. It rarely appears as blatant sabotage. More often, it wears the clothes of celebrated traits: relentless drive, perfectionism, an insatiable will to win. Because these are praised, the unconscious motives behind them, like a deep fear of worthlessness or abandonment, remain hidden and thus in control. Jung's insight here is crucial. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Modern cognitive science echoes this. A vast portion of our decision-making is governed by unconscious patterns, emotional memories, and beliefs formed long ago. When you're unaware of these patterns, you believe you're choosing freely, while actually running on old, invisible software. Imagine your life as a ship. You believe you're steering by the stars above deck, but beneath the waterline, an unseen rudder, your shadow is turning based on deep hidden currents. Your conscious choices are continually adjusted by this invisible force. Confronting the shadow demands radical honesty. It means admitting you feel envy, that you crave validation, that you're terrified of being ordinary. Every denied fragment doesn't disappear. Its energy only grows in the dark, influencing you from the shadows. The Jungian path isn't to eliminate the shadow, but to integrate it. Integration means bringing it into awareness. When you know your competitive fire stems from a fear of insignificance, you can channel that energy consciously, not be enslaved by it. When you acknowledge your need for recognition, you can choose not to trade your peace for it. The core lesson is this: the greatest influence on your life is rarely outside you. It is the unexamined inner world, operating just below sight. Bringing it to light is the true expansion of consciousness. From that place of awareness, reaction is replaced with genuine choice. 5. The way forward, inward focus and quiet action. Seeing the mask, facing the silence, and acknowledging the shadow leads you here. Not to a grand finale, but to a clear, settled beginning. The question becomes, how will you live from this point? The answer, distilled, is a life of inward focus and quiet action. For Jung, focusing on yourself isn't self-obsession. It is the process of reclaiming the psychological energy you've been scattering outward toward maintaining images, seeking approval, and managing unconscious reactions. A life lived this way is a life of constant energy leakage. Quiet action begins when that leakage stops. It's the silence of someone who no longer needs to explain their existence. You don't speak to be seen. You don't react to prove a point. Your presence is grounded, not performed. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. You see this in people who once needed constant visibility, but now move with a calm reserve. They haven't disappeared. Their words carry more weight because they aren't diluted by incessant noise. They've established an inner axis. From this steadiness, you move by your own rhythm, not the frantic tempo of comparison. You know when to advance and when to be still. Picture a camera. If you're always panning and zooming frantically, every shot is blurred. Quiet action is setting the tripod down, composing the frame, and waiting for the right light. You may take fewer pictures, but each one has clarity and depth. This approach isn't about abandoning ambition. It's about ensuring your ambition serves your essence, not your insecurities. You build because the work has meaning, not just visibility. This is the expression of a healthy ego, not inflated to mask emptiness, not shrunken from fear, but centered and strong enough to be quiet. As this new year unfolds, this path becomes a conscious choice. To continue on old momentum or to live with deeper intention. Jung promised this wouldn't make you more famous, but it would prevent you from losing yourself in the process of living. The practice is simple, though not easy. Guard a fragment of true silence for yourself each day. A space with no goal of productivity or improvement. In that space, you don't have to become anyone. Speak less where you used to speak for effect. Concentrate your energy on what feels intrinsically right, even if no one applauds. Live this way, and your center of gravity will shift inward on its own. By the end of this, you may not feel a surge of excitement, but a resonant calm. That's the signal. It's the feeling of no longer being pulled outward, but touching the solid ground within. This new chapter doesn't demand you become someone new. It invites you to live more fully as who you've always been. To speak less, but with more clarity. To react less, but from greater steadiness. If this reflection offered you value, a moment of insight or peace, please press like. It's a quiet way to share that this resonated. If you wish to explore more from this perspective, consider subscribing to Winds of Thought. Here's to a year quiet enough to hear your own soul and steady enough to follow its call.